interchange to see if we could see if there was a solution to make it better. We know that there's been it's kind of tight to get on, and there's get on SR1, and there's a there was a real need to look at what the other options were. So when DelDOT asked us to do that, we hired Century to give us a hand with looking at the problem and trying to come up with a solution. I want to thank Century and especially Drew Boyce in giving us a hand with this, and I'm really looking forward to hear what we're gonna hear tonight. So thank you for coming, and let's let Drew get going.
Thanks, Jim. So hopefully everybody can see the slide deck, and we'll use this to help guide our conversation. And so the first thing that I want to do is just go over a little bit of housekeeping. So hopefully you all are you're all in and can hear me and see the presentation. If you're having trouble connecting your computer audio, you can always phone in, and there's the phone number and the webinar ID and the passcode, so that'll allow you audio access. I'll just leave that up there in case anybody's having any audio issues trying to get connected. So this is a webinar format workshop. And so basically I'll be presenting information, but and the way that we'll be communicating is that we ask you to use the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So if you, anytime during the presentation, if you've got questions, please use the Q&A box to put your question in there. We have some panelists on this side that will either interrupt me or guide me to your question when those questions pop up. And then of course, at the end, we'll have more of an open dialogue to get your information. Really, this is us reaching out to the community, trying to get your concerns about the project and the project area, and maybe some of the issues that you've been having navigating the access on and off of SR1 at Trap Shooters Road. In addition to the Q&A function, you can also email questions to Jim. James Galvin at doverkentnpo.org. And then, and so he will also be shuffling those to me as we move through the public workshop. So each question again will be reviewed by the moderator and then presented, and then we'll try to get you a verbal answer right here during the workshop. I did want to note that the workshop is being recorded and will be available, I'm going to say in the next week or so, on the MPO website. And so at the very end of the slide, I have the website address for the MPO projects, and we'll create a project page there. This being the first meeting, we will have the recording on their website as well as this PowerPoint presentation. So what are we going to cover tonight? So this is the existing conditions kind of public workshop. What's the state of the state as it relates to this interchange and this interface with SR1 from Barker's Landing Road / Trap Shooters Road onto SR1, both north and southbound. So we're going to look at the study area, look at the purpose and need, look at our work plan, how we're going to progress through the study, and the touch points that we're going to have with the public. Then we'll take a pretty deep dive into the existing conditions, looking at both traffic, safety on the roadway, and then some of the environmental constraints that we see might be an issue as we look at possible alternatives to help bring a solution to the existing problem. Talk a little bit about current DelDOT efforts, go over our schedule, and then again, a formal question and answer at the end of the presentation. So here's the study area. We're really focusing on the the interchange between Trap Shooters Road and SR1, both in the northbound and the southbound direction. We're also, as part of this, looking at the Barker's Landing Road and Trap Shooters Road intersection, that T intersection as you approach the Trap Shooters Road kind of loop. So that's the study area. So I want to get a feel for who we have participating with us tonight. And so I'm getting ready to launch a poll question and ask you kind of what best describes you. Are you elected official, government official, engineering consultant, local resident, or do you classify yourself as, if none of those really describe you, then select the other. So let me go ahead and launch poll number 1, and I'll give you a couple minutes to respond. Okay, great. I'm going to end the poll. And so as you can see, 63% or 5 of the 8 folks that are with us are local residents. And so that's great, because that's who we want to hear from. Local government is represented, and a couple folks in the other category. So I'll have to work on expanding my list to try to capture. If you wanted to put in the Q&A box for those and other, just who you represent, so maybe we can capture in our public workshop write-up who you are. So I'll stop sharing that. So also wanted to get an idea about where folks live relative to this interchange. So let me launch another poll question here. So this is what best describes where you live. So along Barker's Landing, Ponderosa, Plain Dealing, within the Jonathan's Landing community, Church Creek, the general Magnolia area. That can be outside of the city limits if you consider yourself a resident of Magnolia. Just give it a few more seconds here for folks to respond. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. And so, this is great news. We got the folks that live and are impacted by this intersection participating with us tonight. So most folks live in the Magnolia area. We've got a representative from Church Creek, and then Barker's Landing Road. So again, thank you for participating tonight, and we look forward to having a good dialogue with you. Okay. So as Jim stated, this project was initiated by DelDOT, and so when we think about what's the purpose, why are we doing this study? So we're really looking to improve the safety and capacity at the intersection of SR1 and Trap Shooters Road. That's as plain and simple as it can get. The intersection is experiencing high crash rates, and the intersection basically, because of the stop condition of the northbound access from Trap Shooters Road, that does impact the overall capacity of SR1. And so those needs are clearly identified. We have capacity issues and safety issues associated with this. And so So kind of our process through the purpose and need is going to be, or through the study is, once we identify the purpose and need, then it's looking at impact comparison of different alternatives as we develop those, looking at how the agencies are going to look at those impacts, and then of course public involvement throughout the whole process. So our work plan is basically we started this project back in the fall of 22, and we've been doing a lot of data gathering. We are now at this first point of community input, so we're very early in the process of the life of this study. Once we get your input tonight, we'll go back to the drawing board. We'll develop conceptual alternatives. We'll refine those. We'll get more detail. We'll develop a matrix of comparisons, just looking at how each alternative impacts different resources, and then we will put some cost to those, and then come up with a final report. And again, we're going to have 3 points of community input. This is being the first one. We'll be back to you at a live public workshop once we develop some alternatives. And then once we refine those, we'll be back once more just before the final report for any last minute public input. Some of the things that we're going to be looking at in the comparison matrix are the level of service. I'll talk about that a little bit. It's a measure of how well the system, the traffic is moving through the system, potential safety improvements, environmental impacts, stormwater impacts, those types of things. Existing conditions, as you know, this is not the existing conditions. So this is what the road looked like about 10 years ago, before DelDOT reconfigured this entrance due to some high crash rates. And so this is how it used to be, with a kind of a yield, a free right. A lot of people used the shoulder as they went northbound, specifically focusing on the northbound movements. And so this is what it was before DelDOT made this safety improvement, which basically brought folks traveling, wanting to go northbound, to a stop condition at SR1. Then you wait for the gap, and then you accelerate in the through lane. The configuration of the southbound interface did not change. So it's a deceleration lane. Once you come across Barker's Landing Bridge, decelerate and then get onto trap shooters. If you're heading southbound out of Barker's Landing Road, you access SR1 southbound. It's existing conditions. So just to get an idea about how many times a week do you drive through this intersection? So I'm going to launch this poll here, and so if you could just let us know about how many times you use the Okay, great. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So most people fall within the 1 to 5 times a week. There's a couple or one person in the 6 to 10 range, and then one person stays away from it completely. So appreciate that feedback. Gives us an idea of the user experience with folks that are with us tonight at this workshop. We stop sharing that. Okay. So again, in this assessment of existing conditions, we did traffic counts, just trying to get a sense of the volumes and really how much traffic is getting on and off of Route 1 at this location. We did physical counts in October and November, and then used some of DelDOT's data to determine what summer Saturday turning movements would be. So let's take a closer look at some of that data. So this is non-summer peak hour turning movements. So what you can see is, because I have a separate slide for summer, so just focus on the first three numbers. The first number is the AM, then midday, and then PM. And just some things to note here is that obviously the data is pointing us to probably what we already know, is that AM is heavy in the northbound direction. So you can see 194 right turns in the peak hour. So that's within 1 hour period, 194 cars making that right-hand turn to go northbound. And then in the PM, it's heavy southbound. So you can see in the PM peak hour, 261 in the peak hour are making that right-hand turn coming southbound on SR1 onto Trapshooters Road. So this is, when I say peak hour, these are midday or Monday through Friday, AM and PM peak hour. So the peak hour can vary between 15-minute increments, but it's the highest hour within the AM rush and the PM rush. That's what those numbers represent. So let's take a look at summer Saturday. And so we can see on summer Saturday, we've got obviously higher volumes on SR1. And so we're seeing fewer vehicles using the Trapshooters Road interchange. So only 109 going in the northbound direction and 79 exiting in the southbound direction. So it's about half of the volumes that we see during the weekday peak hour. And that may be that the local folks just know when they can get on SR1 easily and efficiently, and when they can't. So we take all these numbers and we use a measuring tool that we define as levels of service. So it's very much like school. If there's a rating of A through F, if the level of service is A, obviously that's free flow. Everything is going fine. There's no issues on the system. And then as you transition or migrate towards F, more congestion, more delays. And so this is the tool that traffic engineers and DelDOT uses to measure the kind of the efficiency and delay at a particular intersection. So I wanted to define that before I show you kind of what these existing conditions, what these two ramp interfaces with SR1 are experiencing. And so a lot of numbers you can see, this is southbound. So we'll look at the southbound direction first. So in the AM, things are doing well. You know, we talked about the volumes are a little less in the AM. PM, things pick up. And so it gets a little bit worse in the weekday PM peak hour. And then in the summer Saturday, you can see that things really start to fall apart. We've got we've got over 90 seconds of delay. So that's cars are having to sit there for well over a minute on average to be able to find a gap to come into the system. If we focus our attention to the northbound, you can see that in the AM, where we had that 197 vehicles trying to make that right turn, we're already experiencing a level of service F in the existing condition. Things get better in the midday, and in the PM, it's a little bit of delay. But then in the summer, again, when volumes on SR1 pick up and there are fewer gaps, folks are having to wait longer to find those gaps. And so there's more cumulative delay on that side street as vehicles try to find that gap to come out. Even though there's less vehicles doing it, those vehicles are experiencing a higher, having to wait longer. Okay, so that's the state of the state as far as the traffic volumes, and the level of service at these intersections. I wanted to transition to the crash data that we collected. So we did an evaluation of crashes from October 21st, 2017 through October 31st, 2022. And so you'll see as we go through the data that this intersection experiences its fair share of crashes. So real quick, I know there's just a few of us here, but have you or someone you've known been in a crash or near miss at this intersection? Just wanted to get a sense of whether anybody's experienced a crash. So let me launch that poll. Whoops. Hang on. Let me relaunch the poll. There you go. Give you a chance to actually answer this time. Okay, great. So thankfully, most folks have not experienced or know anybody that's been in a crash at this location. So we're thankful for that. However, there are a few folks on the call that have experienced a crash or know somebody that has experienced a crash or been in a near miss. So the intersection, like I said, does experience its fair share of crashes. This is too small, I know, to read, but it just is an example of the analysis that we did. And I've got some more slides to share on a few of the statistics. But you can see a bulk of the crashes are on SR1 near the interchange, and so a lot of those are front to rear. You know, somebody enters into the road maybe at a slower speed. Somebody puts on their brakes as they approach that slower moving vehicle. Person behind them, you know, gets into a front to rear crash. There's a couple of side angles. Some just run off the road. A few crashes dealing with wildlife. So it's a pretty broad mix of crashes. So let's look at the detail a little bit more. First, we'll look at southbound. And so in the study period, the 5-year crash data period, we had 35 crashes recorded. And you can see at the annual crashes, the 19 to 20. So this was October 19 to 20. So it's effectively most of calendar year 20 experienced 13 crashes just in that 1 year. And so that was a little bit of an anomaly in that it really kind of sticks out like a sore thumb on this. A lot of those crashes were, and I don't think that I have the slide, but you know, most of them were attributed to some type of driver error, driver inattention, those types of things. One of the other points of data is the day of the week crash data. So again, this is southbound, and so you can see Friday has a higher number of crashes. That is something that we would expect, considering that we've got a lot of traffic moving south on Friday on SR1, and the probability of a crash might be a little higher. In the northbound, Over the 5-year period, we had a total of 19 crashes, and relatively consistent across the years, a little drop in 2021. And then fairly evenly distributed through the days of the week. So nothing was really sticking out as far as an anomaly that we could look at any closer as far as crashes. The one thing that did stick out was the fact that the 35 crashes that we experienced in this roadway section are create a crash rate that is higher, relatively speaking, to other roads in Kent County and then other roads within the state. And so when we look at this 20 to 20, the data in the top is from 2020. The data to the right is 2021. And so basically SR1 northbound, SR1 southbound, and Trap Shooters Road all experience higher crash rates than similar roads in Kent County and similar roads in the statewide. One of the reasons why we are doing this planning study and trying to get an improvement at this location. We did improve in the crash rates as we look at the data from 21, but still the rates are significantly higher than similar roads in Kent County. So even though we've made some improvement from 20 to 21, these roads are still experiencing higher crash rates than comparatively the roads that are similar in both Kent County and statewide. So I said earlier that that we had more crashes in the southbound direction than we did in the northbound direction. It's 35 in the southbound and 19 in the northbound. And so did that surprise you? And so let me just launch this question because I was, I'm interested. So this is, what direction did you think there would be more crashes in SR1, the northbound or the southbound? So like the majority of you, I thought that there would be more crashes in the northbound direction as well. And so it just goes to show that that we need to use the data to drive our thought process and our decision-making process. And it's not necessarily what we think might be happening, but really what the data is driving us to. So so that's a summary of the traffic situation at this intersection and the crash situation at this intersection. Now let's move into a little bit of the environmental constraints. You know, if you drive the area, you know that it is, there's a lot of low-lying areas around the interchange itself. It kind of sits up, and you can see in a couple of these graphics that it is kind of the only high point in an area that has a lot of wetlands around it, which makes whatever possible solutions that we're going to come up with, we're going to have to work hard to come up with possible solutions. So these two maps represent the natural areas and the wetlands inventory, and you can see that it is, you know, the whole area is really inundated with those wetlands. When we look at groundwater recharge areas, there are some up north of the project, but none really within the project vicinity. When we look at wells and underground tanks, we know that there are some located in the project area, but it really shouldn't be something that's going to impact our solutions as we come up with those alternatives, but something to consider for sure. Many of you may know that that the Delaware National Estuarine Research Reserve, the St. John's Reserve, the Denier, is located just to the north of Trap Shooters and SR1 interchange. And so they have identified the area just to the east and south of the interchange as a buffer area. And so we're still exploring exactly what that means, and are there any limitations or restrictions on what we can do in that buffer area. This is some protected resources that were identified, and the National Estuarine Reserve. So that the National Estuarine Reserve kind of comes up here and to the north of the project. And like I said earlier, the denier, which is the Delaware, actually creates that buffer kind of south of that blue area and in the project limits, which is identified in the red. And there are some historic and archaeological resources in the area, but none that are kind of in the areas that we would be looking at for possible solutions. So hopefully those don't become an issue. And you can see from the map of the area that most of the area that's not wetlands or in any way encumbered by some natural resource is typically farmland being farmed. So that's the existing conditions from an environmental perspective. I wanted to briefly go over some of DelDOT's efforts. And as some of you may be aware, DelDOT is working on an SR1 plan update as it relates to the corridor capacity preservation program. And so they are looking at options and alternatives to help preserve the capacity of SR1. And some of the strategies that they're looking at as part of that project is to create frontage roads, to combine access points, to strategically locate interchanges to help with that local traffic as it interfaces with SR1. We want to try to get those at a high type intersection where cars can have a separate area to decelerate and accelerate properly so that they can merge into SR1 without compromising the capacity of SR1. So DelDOT recently had public workshops on that project, November 15th and 16th. And you can find out more information on those public workshops if you just type in DelDOT and then Corridor Capacity Preservation Program on any search engine, and it'll take you right to the DelDOT website. In addition, the DelDOT sanctioned a study to look at the SR1 capacity, looking all the way from the horizon year was 2050. So DelDOT looked at how SR1 was going to grow, the volumes on SR1 was going to grow, and then did the existing lanes, 2 lanes in this particular area, have the capacity to handle that anticipated growth all the way up to 2050. What that study revealed was that there is going to be the need for a 3rd lane between now and 2050. And so when we dove into that analysis, it looks like the trigger for that 3rd lane, volume wise, if you look at and the projections are as predicted, then that 3rd lane would be needed sometime in the range of 2035 to 2045. Again, you're rubbing the crystal ball a little bit as we look into the future, but that's the best information that we have at this point. And so ultimately, as much as DelDOT has tried to preserve the existing capacity, just the overall growth in the state is driving for another lane on SR1. And in this particular location, it would be the addition of a 3rd lane. Again, more information at the DelDOT website for the Corridor Capacity Preservation Program. So just a quick poll, just to keep you engaged here. Are you familiar with DelDOT's Corridor Capacity Preservation Program? Just give it another second or two. Right. Well, I'm glad to report that, that the majority of you are familiar. So kudos to DelDOT for getting that information out and making folks aware. And so so I would encourage you to stay involved and informed relative to that that program. All right, so what I want to show in the next couple of slides is what is in what DelDOT presented at that public workshop as it relates to the SR1 and Trap Shooters Road project. So, so DelDOT presented a series of boards, static boards at the workshop, and so they represent an idea that that could be implemented to help improve the capacity of this interchange with SR1 and thereby increasing or preserving the existing capacity on SR1. So what is contemplated and what you can see on the graphic is moving Trap Shooters Road to let's look at the southbound direction. So coming off of Barker's Landing Bridge and exiting onto off of SR1. It is really to increase the curvature of that exit and move that loop ramp a little bit further to the west, so that folks can come off of SR1 more efficiently. And so so from the southbound direction, that's what's contemplated. If you're heading south from Trap Shooters Road, a full kind of interstate standard acceleration lane would be incorporated into the design. And so typically that's about 1,500 feet of acceleration to get you up to highway speed before you merge in with traffic. When we look at the northbound interface, so you can see what's being contemplated is to take Trap Shooters Road from where it interfaces now with SR1 and create a parallel road that where you would continue south parallel to SR1, and then you would come out onto SR1 about 1,000 feet south of its current location. And then what that does is that allows the ability to add a full acceleration lane and deceleration lane from SR1 at this intersection, at this interchange. And so if you're coming northbound, you would exit at the T, you'd make a left-hand turn. This is a two-way frontage road. And then you would come back to existing Trap Shooters and just follow Trap Shooters like you do now to get to Barker's Landing Road. So that's what was presented as part of the SR1 Corridor Capacity Preservation Program. This study is taking a little bit deeper dive and looking at the really the feasibility of this alternative, as well as other alternatives, either similar to this or you know, to really refine the alternatives moving forward, put some cost to them so that we can advance this portion of the SR1 plan. And this is a more detailed blow up. You can see that the frontage roads are two-way. You can also see that this light green is a wetland area. So the The road is traversing through wetlands that will have to be coordinated, mitigated, and really looking at the feasibility of the impacts. Is this a viable option? And so that's what we're going to be looking at as part of this. You can see that the acceleration lane, you're back on to SR1 prior to Barker's Landing Bridge. So that's the goal here, is to move that intersection further south so that a full acceleration lane can be installed prior to Barker's Landing Bridge. It's one of the ideas that will move forward because it was presented here with as part of the corridor capacity preservation plan. Okay, another blow up of you can see the deceleration lane and the acceleration lane at this kind of relocated interface between trap shooters and SR1. Again, these were presented at the public workshop for the corridor capacity preservation program. Okay, so so that is pretty much the existing conditions as we have them. And so when we look at our schedule, we had a kickoff meeting back in October, did counts through October, November, data gathering on the environmental side through December, January. We're here at our first public workshop here at January 23rd. We're going to be going through some alternatives development through February and March. We're going to be back for public workshop number 2 in the March timeframe. That's going to be an in-person, hopefully at the school there in Magnolia. But those of you who are participating in this workshop, we have your emails, and so we'll make sure that we get you the information directly, and we would ask that you share it with your neighbors as well. And after public workshop 2, we will be working on the draft report. We'll present that in the May timeframe at public workshop number 3, and then look for a final report there at the beginning of or kind of midsummer. So that's the schedule as we have it laid out. And now I would say, I would just ask, hopefully we've got some questions in the Q&A box. If not, start typing them. And if you're on the phone, we can just let us know by doing a *9, and that raises your hand, and then we can get you unmuted to be able to ask your question. So I'll ask Sonia. Sonia, do we have any questions so far?
I do not have any questions at the moment, Drew.
All right. So let's, since we don't have that many people, can we just unmute everybody and just ask in general if maybe somebody wants to verbally just provide either a question or comment even relative to the information that they heard tonight, and then hopefully be able to guide us moving forward. I think Sonia's asking everybody to unmute, and so I think you might have to click a button to be able to acknowledge that. And then, and so I'll ask again if anybody has any questions or comments that they would like to make at this time. We'd be happy to hear from you.
Hey, Drew, it's Josh Thomas. Can you hear me?
I can, Josh.
Hey, great presentation. I'm just curious, it might help those we have online. Do you guys have any insight into why the southbound crashes would be higher than northbound? Because it seems like most of us is counterintuitive.
Yeah, yes. I'm actually digging into that. There were just a lot of anomalies in the southbound direction. A lot more animal encounters in that southbound direction. And so, and then we had that anomaly, in 2020, where, in most cases, volumes were down, crashes were down because of, we were in the middle of the pandemic, right? But for some reason, there were just a lot of fender benders at this location. So
I think, I don't know, it could just be me, but I think that the turn is sharper too, when you're going southbound
Mhm. Yeah,
from
Yeah, the-
Sharpshooters Road onto Route 1.
Yeah, I was wondering that too, Helen. I was thinking, I saw in the concepts that kind of deceleration turn would be stretched out, and I'm wondering if that might help with your sight lines and your, as you come around that corner, you're watching for oncoming traffic. And so yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely interesting to know, because I just didn't, it was counterintuitive.
Yeah, Helen makes a good point. I'll back up just to that blow up of that. And so they are trying to flatten this. We don't have enough room on the bridge, so the deceleration lane has to turn here. And the idea is that this is a flatter turn here, so that you can come in at a little bit a higher rate of speed, and then reduce your speed through this next curve. And so that's part of the reason for this concept that was presented as part of the SR1 corridor capacity preservation. Why this road kind of moved to the west. It was to accomplish that, Helen. So good observation. Any other questions or comments from the folks online?
Yeah, Ron Cantrell in Magnolia. It seems like all of the on and offs on Route 1 are extremely tight for truck drivers or any commercial vehicles, and they're hard to navigate and dangerous.
Yeah, great point, Ron. And in fact, there are design standards that we'll have to apply when we sketch out our alternatives that do provide, that do accommodate for commercial vehicles, all the way up to a full-size tractor trailer.
Well, yeah,
In this particular case, we might also be looking at farm equipment, because we've got active farms on both sides of SR1.
right.
But we'll make a special note of that, and hopefully provide some information during the presentation of the alternatives, which will happen in the March timeframe. So hopefully you'll come back and take a look.
Well,
at
I'm looking forward to see you then.
Yeah.
And I'll bring friends.
Great.
Hi, good evening. This is Jeff Miller. I was wondering who's developing the alternatives, and if you may not know, if any of the alternatives kind of look at basically eliminating trap shooters, and maybe moving it an intersection further south.
So we, Jeff, to answer the first part of your question, so Century Engineering, under contract with the Kent County MPO, will be developing those alternatives, and we'll be, we have a core group of folks. Not only is it the MPO represented, but also DelDOT Planning is also represented. So we'll be coordinating, collaborating as we move those alternatives forward. And I would say that everything's going to be on the table. What was presented tonight was just the idea that came out of the SR1 corridor capacity preservation program. But I think that there may be other ideas that we need to dive into. So that's really, as soon as we get done this meeting, that's going to be our work over the next 6 weeks to really put our thinking caps on and come up with some creative solutions. And again, I can't say, we need to look at the traffic numbers to see whether elimination is a viable alternative, looking at where those trips are going to go, because there is quite a high number of vehicles that utilize that intersection. And I think that there are some solutions that are kind of in that, what I'll call relative to highway construction, kind of that mid-priced solution. I don't think you're going to have any that are going to be kind of this low-hanging fruit that you can implement, at a very low cost. But I think kind of a mid-cost improvement would definitely have an impact on the crash rate and the capacity. And so then you can just go up from there. We could slide another interchange further south and have a whole new interface with SR1 as a possibility. So.
Well, on the southbound side there, I can tell you that when the speed limit drops from 65 to 55, there are people that slow down, and the people that are in a hurry, everything gets confused. It happens too quick.
Okay.
I mean, there are people that do the speed limit, and there are people that 15 mile over the speed limit's the speed limit.
Yeah, we did not look at at that sign progression. I know what you're talking about, Ron. I know that the speed limit, because DelDOT extended the 65 down
To the bridge.
Right. and I'm assuming they've got the proper signage there, but we didn't. I didn't with my team review that, so maybe we'll take a look at that as well.
Because I watch it all the time. There's somebody slowing down and somebody trying to change lanes to get around them.
Yeah. And I think, when we look at this area between, here and North Frederica, I think there's going to be continued pressure, especially if this area gets improved. I think this is what this interchange is what's keeping the speed at 55 currently.
I know that.
I think that if
it's the last, you got one house in that stretch. To somehow connect to a road so that it could be all the way down to south of Frederica as limited access.
Right. Yeah, and that's what the SR1 plan update contemplates, is a migration from SR1 kind of as a arterial kind of expressway into more of a controlled access freeway. And so that's part of the strategies there are, kind of eliminating the single point residential accesses, combining accesses, frontage roads, those types of things. And so that's what you're seeing as part of their thoughts on this interchange. How can we improve this interchange to basically maintain the existing capacity that we have? And so that's what these thoughts are intended to generate.
I'm very happy with the 1,500 foot acceleration deacceleration lane. That's what's needed right now. On Saturday morning from around 11 to about 2 in the afternoon, I won't even go that way. It's impossible. But there's hotel kick out, and they are all heading home like Mad Max.
Yeah.
And they're going home.
Yeah, that's what we were seeing. The peak hour, it was half of what it is on the weekday. And so folks just know with that increased volume on one during the weekend that it's, you don't even try it, because you'll be sitting there for a while.
A long while. Back when the light was there at Bowers Beach Road, at least you could wait 5 minutes and get out. And on Saturday, you can't wait long enough because they're just everywhere.
Yeah. Yep. Good points. Great. Any other comments or questions?
No, not right offhand. You've been most helpful and I've learned a lot.
Well, appreciate your participation, Ron, for sure. And we've got your, if you registered for this, I apologize. We won't spam you to death, but you will get an email with a notice on our next workshop. So that we can create some continuity with the conversation. And then hopefully we can get a few of your neighbors interested in the project. So just as a closing, I will say that this is the Dover Kent County MPO website, and this project will land in their projects subfolder. So if you just Google Dover Kent MPO, it'll come up, and then they have a tab at the top that says projects. It's not there now, but we'll work on getting this presentation as well as the audio recording loaded up there so that you can point your friends to it should they want to kind of review what we did over the workshop. And Jim is the project manager at the MPO, so there's his contact information, and I'm with Century Engineering, a Kleinfelder company that are helping to support the MPO. So I just want to, Jim, do you have any closing remarks? I'll turn it back to you, but I just want us to say thank you and for your participation, and I'll let Jim say the final words.
I just wanted to say that we don't have any emails either, but thank you all for listening tonight. I think that it was a great presentation, and I look forward to an even better one in a couple of weeks. So thank you all and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Drew.